Hello, I'm Danna Beal, and here with me is John Smallman.
Hi,
Hi, John. It's great to see you.
and you're looking well.
Thank you. So are you. You're in New Hampshire, and I'm out in the Seattle, Washington area. So it's just wonderful the technology now that can bring us together that we didn't have available not that long ago.
Right, it's like being in the same room together. It's amazing, yeah.
Yes, it's amazing. Well, what I wanted to tell our audience today is that we want to talk to you about aligning with love, inspiration, and miracles. But it's based on two workshops that John and I did, one in November here in the Seattle area, and again in January. And what we did is come together to help people that want to feel more in alignment and more connected with their divine guidance, or some people call it channeling, some people call it connecting with their inspiration. I call mine just aligning with my inspiration and connecting with my inner guidance. But before we talk about that, I want to have each of us tell you a little bit about who we are, because not everyone in the audience knows us. So, John, do you want to give a little background about who you are?
Sure, yeah. I was born in England a long time ago, and I went to Jesuit boarding school for about 10 years and hated it and left without any qualifications, whatever. Couldn't think what to do. And I explained to my dad I'd like to fly airplanes and maybe get a job as a pilot. So he couldn't think of anything better for me to do either. So he agreed to pay for my flying training. And I became an airline pilot. And once I was qualified, I did it for the next 42 years up until 2003. So I did that for a long time. And my Catholic upbringing led me into marriage very early on, because sex out of marriage was absolutely forbidden. You'd be damned in hell forever. So I got married. We had a couple of kids, but the marriage really wasn't a very good idea. Excuse me. And it was really falling apart, and I hated going home. But I had two lovely little children, and they were the ones I lived for. And then I met somebody. Airline pilots tend to meet beautiful young women flying as cabin attendants, and that happened to me, the old story. And we got together, and eventually I left my wife, and the young woman that I had the affair with became my wife. We lived together for 37 years and had a daughter. And round about 1980, somebody introduced me to a book on channeling, and I thought, what on earth is this? I'd lost interest in religion of the dogmatic type totally, and read this book, was fascinated with it, read lots of channeled books, and eventually in 1995, I sat down with a pen in hand and said, dear God, if there's someone up there of high spiritual integrity who would like to come through, I'm willing to give it a go. And almost immediately, Saul started talking to me, and I've been channeling him ever since. And then in 2011, I think it was, I got a sort of intuitive hit that Jesus wanted to come through. And my immediate reaction was, give me a break. I mean, I'm channeling Saul. Loads of people are channeling Jesus. We've got A Course in Miracles. We've got all sorts of stuff out there. It must be my ego. But the nudging persisted. And after about a month, I finally sat down with my pen and I said, okay, Jesus, if you really want to come through, I'm here. And boom, in came a message. So since then, I've been channeling them both, and it's ongoing. It has been very uplifting and inspiring for me. And the intriguing thing is I take it down, I post it, and I forget it. And I reread it, maybe months or years later. I think, oh, yeah, I remember that. But I think it goes in on a deeper level. This is the great thing about channeling. You are getting guidance from the divine realms. And by writing it down, you're opening yourself to it. But you don't have to remember it. It goes in on a much deeper level, and it does change the way you behave in your life, the way you interact with people. So for me, it's been very, very helpful.
Well, and that is how I met you. You are quite well known on the internet, and I listened to your channelings, your divine guidance, and it resonated with me and the inspiration that I receive. And so I called you, and you and I became friends.
Indeed, yes.
Yes. And so what I was doing at the time, I had been a business consultant, well, still am, and working with bringing spirit and compassion and trust to the workplace. And I started receiving what I call inspiration, waking up in the night and writing, and just like a a stream of consciousness comes through to me with beautiful words. And like you, if I don't write them down as they come, I forget them. And I have been working throughout the United States and Canada, speaking at national and international conferences because I believe the workplace needs healing. So I wrote a book called The Extraordinary Workplace, Replacing Fear with Trust and Compassion. And you and I both agree that being in alignment with love, being in alignment with a higher realm, a higher dimension. In fact, I kind of liken it to being connected to the internet, all that is, or God, or the divine, whatever you want to call it, rather than just working offline by our in our small self. You also, John, wrote a book, and what was the name of your book?
Our Divine Destiny, a soul book.
Yes.
And it's basically channelings of soul that I did between 1995 and 2009.
Yes, and so the written words are out there, but
Yeah.
I think it's really fun for us to be able to come today and, just sit here and talk to people about our experiences because so many people have told you and me they would like to get more inspired and have more miracles in their lives and have more joy in their lives. And so, John, you and I each have experienced a miracle just recently. We told our audiences here in January about. You want
Yeah,
to
we
tell?
did.
Yeah, you tell them about what happened to you when you're in that state of presence and
Okay,
alignment.
yeah. It was interesting because my wife died in 2013 in October, nearly 4 years ago now. And she had been unhealthy for a long time and could not be left alone. I needed to be with her to support her and run energy when her heart used to go bananas and go very, very fast. And if
Mm-hmm.
I was there, I could put a hand on her back and on her chest, and within 2 minutes, it calmed right down. If I wasn't there, it could go on pounding frantically for hours, and very frightening it was for her. So I was very wrapped up in being there with her and helping her over the years. And then she died, and I was at a loose end for a bit. And
Imagine.
then a lot of my own stuff came up. I did a lot of releasing. And then summer 2014, I found I was feeling very much at peace. We had a lovely summer here in New Hampshire. I used to sit out on the deck at the back of the house and read and have my breakfast or something. And one day I sat down to channel Jesus, and I sort of started off by saying, by the way, Jesus, it would be nice to have a woman companion in my life. I'd really very much like that. I don't need it, but it would be really lovely to have someone who's on the same page as myself. And I just leave it with you. And I forgot all about it. And then at the end of last year, when Danna and I had agreed to get together and do the webinar, a woman from New Jersey emailed me and said she was coming to Seattle, and we were only doing a 2-hour webinar. She'd like to talk to me. And I said, oh, that's interesting. So I said, yes, fine, yeah. And then she emailed a couple of days later and said, no, she wasn't coming. And I thought, well, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, from New Jersey to Seattle for 2 hours, to see me and chat for 2 hours doesn't make a lot of sense, especially as I live in New Hampshire. It'd be much easier for us to meet there. And so I forgot about it. And then on, I think, the 26th of December, I got an email from another friend who channels, and she channels Jesus, and she said she was getting a very strong nudge from Jesus that I should get together with this woman, the woman who had emailed me previously. So I was kind of blown away by this. I thought, interesting. So I emailed her back and said, well, okay, if you feel like introducing us, please email us both, and then I will respond to her. So this friend immediately did that. And when I got and so she said, okay. And she came up, and it was just magnificent. We were on the same page right from the word go. And a week later, I went to visit her in New Jersey, and we became engaged to be married. So it was a real miracle in response to my asking Jesus to find someone for me. So
Boy,
miracles happen if you're open to them, definitely.
yeah, so that should be encouraging for anyone out there that's hoping to meet the love of their life, that miracles like that happen. And mine briefly was not quite as dramatic, but it was quite dramatic for me. I found out right in January on a Thursday that my house that I was renting was going to be sold. And so I needed a new place to live. And if you know anything about the Seattle area, we're the fastest growing in the nation with rents just going up, 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 out of sight. Well, the very next day, I met a lady while I was at the Apple store doing some uploading on my phone. And long story short, she had a place to rent, a lovely place, but they hadn't really decided to rent it. Her mother had lived there, and they hadn't advertised it. And she and her husband thought, and by the way, they're a lovely couple, they thought if they met the right person, the perfect person, that they would rent this beautiful apartment. And so 2 days later, she called me and said, we decided we'd like you to see it. And that's where I'm sitting now. So I had a situation that which can be very stressful, having to move, just fall into my lap, and I never even had to look. So I think our stories illustrate when we're in presence and when we believe there's divine guidance and when we're connected and in alignment, magic happens. Things come into our lives beyond anything we could imagine. Would you agree with that, John?
Absolutely, yes. If you're open to stuff, it arrives for you. If you're worrying about it and trying to make it happen, frequently it doesn't. Your
Exactly.
ego gets involved and you have expectations of how it should turn out. Whereas if you don't have any expectations, then it just falls into your lap
Yes.
in ways that you couldn't possibly have imagined.
Yes. Well, when we had our workshops, we took people through some exercises where we did some meditation and some breathing and helped people get started by just simply starting to write on a piece of paper when they got very present and allow it to flow. And people discovered they connected to something really great when they were in the right place, in the present moment, because basically, and I know you agree with this, John, God, the guidance, in any of the spiritual realms can only connect with us in the present. They can't connect with us when we're in our mental mind from the past or if we're worrying about the future. So we did a lot of those kind of workshops with people, and we aren't going to take the time to do that today. But what we did want to talk about, John and I talked before this session, are what are the things that get in the way or the barriers that prevent us from connecting to that divine stream of consciousness. And so, John, do you want to answer that? And I'll add to what I have, my feelings.
Yeah, I came up in the Catholic tradition where there was, heaven and hell, sin, judgment, punishment, all that sort of stuff. And I think an awful lot of us in any of the main religions got a lot of that sort of, you have to be good, otherwise God will be angry with you. And so we ended up feeling inadequate because small children always make mistakes. You always make a mess of your homework, you spill your milk, whatever it is. So there's always judgment, and you end up not liking yourself very much and feeling not very competent or worthwhile. And then you're worrying about how other people see you. And so you have this constant roof brain chatter going on. And you just never stop thinking. There's stuff going on and on and on and on. How many of you have been driving down the interstate or the motorway or something, and suddenly you're 20 miles past the exit you needed to take because you're miles away on some other jazz? So if we can learn to meditate, which is basically sitting quietly and not engaging with thoughts. You can't really stop the thoughts, but what tends to happen is you remember an incident where you were very hurt by somebody and you relive it and you think of all the things you could have said or could have done, and then it leads to another thing. So what you need to do is when that thought comes up, say, oh, I'm still remembering that, and let it go. Don't engage with it. And over a period of time, as you practice meditation, you'll find that these thoughts are not so demanding of your attention. You're able to let them go and just be more at peace. And when you're at peace, then the love that we are and that surrounds us and envelops us flows in, and we can feel the experience of being at peace, accepted and loved. And when you're in that state, you can channel, because then you can open yourself, as I did, and say, hey, if there's anybody there who'd like to come through, I'm ready, willing and able. Excuse me. And if you do, it's very likely that you will find words dropping into your mind, and if you type them or write them, whatever works for you, when you read them back afterwards, you'll find that they're very uplifting, inspiring, and probably very appropriate for you in the situation you're in this moment. That's my experience anyhow.
Yeah, Yes, and the guilt part is, I think, something that isn't just Catholics. I talk to my audiences about, I think the thing that gets in the way the most of us connecting and being in alignment with the presence and being with the power of universal love, I call it, which is the power that sustains all life, is our own self-doubt, our lack of worth, our self-recrimination, and deprecating remarks we say to ourselves. We say things to ourselves we wouldn't let anybody else say to us. And when we're feeling bad about ourselves, we're not going to be connected. We're not in the vibration. We're not in that state of consciousness to receive the guidance. So when we're begging and crying and pleading, we actually are making it more difficult to receive answers and to be receptive to the inspiration and the very things that could come into our lives. It could be a person, it could be an experience, it could be an inspirational idea, it could be a way to change your life, but it won't come when we're being doubtful and cruel to ourselves. And I just see so many people being so hard on themselves. I know I do it. I'll just get upset with myself that I'm not working hard enough, or I didn't do enough, or I should do something more. And when I'm in that state of mind, I'm not receiving guidance. And when I do just the opposite, and I really practice love and acceptance, and I connect with people that are loving, and I go out in the nature, and I really let myself get into that place of being present, it flows for me. And I know you've described similar things yourself to me, John. So,
Yeah.
would you agree that before we can actually give love and have the wonderful experiences and create a culture and change the world with having love and compassion for others, we have to start with loving and accepting ourselves?
Well, of course, because we feel separated from God, which we
Yes,
appear to be down here in human form.
yes,
And what we need and what we desperately want is God's love. But we tend to switch off from it because so many of us don't even believe there's a God out there. For goodness sake, how could there be a God in this crazy world where people are killing and raping and murdering? And
right.
so we shut down and we just want someone to love me. So we go out looking for a relationship, and maybe we get into one and it's fine for a couple of months, and then the glitter wears off and we begin to see aspects of the other person we don't like. But what we're actually seeing is the bits of ourselves we don't like reflected to us. And what we
Yes,
have to do is accept that, hey, I am who I am. I can't change that. I've got to live with this. Why not accept it? Stop judging it. Let it go. And when you can do that, you suddenly find that you're not needing to judge anyone else. And suddenly you feel, yeah, I'm really not so bad. And when you feel I'm not so bad, you find other people feel the same way about you.
yes.
And it's self-acceptance is essential. And to
Mhm.
self-accept, you've got to stop the self-judgment and just say, hey, I'm fine.
Yes.
I'm here to do a task. I don't really understand what it is, but God knows what it is. And if I just let go and allow Him to direct me, things will flow.
Exactly. And I talk to thousands of people, actually, thousands and thousands of people all over the United States in various industries at various levels. And this is one thing I will say: everybody wants to be loved and accepted and needed, no matter who you are.
It's our
And
nature.
it's our nature, exactly. But sometimes our religions and even some of our philosophies have taught us to be loving and giving to everyone, but we forget about ourselves. And so I really believe that if we want to rebuild relationships in the workplace or the world, it starts with discovering our true selves, our true nature, our inner spiritual greatness that basically was intended by the Creator. But somehow we don't believe it, so we wear these masks and we try really hard to impress people and create an image that we think will be safe and will keep us safe and make people respect us. But the truth is, the image is not really who we are. And in fact, we're far more than our image, our
Well,
ego
indeed,
image.
yeah. Because we often focus on what we don't like about ourselves, and that's why we build an ego image to try and hide that from other people. So we
Yes,
pretend to be something that we're not. And of course, we're not what the ego is telling us either.
Exactly.
The mask we put on and the fearful feeling, if people see who I really am, they'll never want to know me. Both of those images are totally false. We have to come to the center and realize that we are perfect just as we are. And we need to stop judging ourselves and others. And when we
Yeah.
can do that, then we can enjoy life as it flows. But as
Yeah.
long as that judgment is going on in our minds of ourselves or others, nothing else can happen. It's just like a loud white noise all the time, Zzz, and it stops your connection.
Exactly. And so one of the things I made up was a little way to try to remember how to be present so that we can allow ourselves to feel the good thoughts about ourselves and feel loving. So I took the word open and I said, just imagine that throughout the day, whether every time you walk through an open door, every time you see a window, throughout the day, say to yourself, open, and it stands for open now, meaning being open, and enter, open now, and then presence. We want to open to the presence of love and bring ourselves back to being present rather than, like you said, driving down the highway and not even being aware of where we are.
Right.
So open to the present and enter now. OPEN. And so I say that to myself throughout the day, especially if I start to feel stressed out, if I start to lose confidence, or if I start to be hard on myself. I just remember open to presence, enter now. And so
And it's very important, I think, not to focus on other people's judgment of you or your assumed judgment that you're receiving from them.
oh
You meet someone and you think, oh my God, I've got to be careful because you think they're judging you. And in
right,
fact, they're probably thinking the same thing about you. So what
absolutely.
other people think about you really doesn't matter. There's that
No.
lovely one-liner, your opinion of me is none of my business.
Yes, that's a great expression. I think in the workplace, especially, people are so worried about what other people are thinking, and there's so often a competitive work environment, and everybody's striving to rise up the corporate ladder, or at least to do a good job, and they're being asked to do more in less time, and people feel very harried and stressed in the workplace. In fact, the Gallup poll said 68 to 70% of people are disengaged in the workplace. In other words, they're no longer loving being at work and enjoying working and having that satisfaction of doing their dream job. And instead, people are worried about what other people think of them. People are competing really for validation and acceptance and power in the workplace. And so the more we get to return home to our own loving heart and trust that we are loved. If you don't believe in a God or a higher divine source, that's okay. Just try to spend time feeling authentic love for yourself. But if you believe in something more, that we're connected to a greater source, it's helpful to me to always know we are very loved. And when we're criticizing or condemning ourselves, we are not listening to the guidance and the love that actually is there for us. So, John, do you have any final thoughts you'd like to add before we tell them about where our blogs are? And I'm going to really encourage people to listen to John's beautiful blogs and recordings, and also to visit my blog site. But John, any final thoughts that you'd like to comment on?
Well, just basically that we are all energy fields. We're all part of the one consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
and that is what we are. And we can use that energy in so many different ways. And what many of us tend to do is sort of look at ourselves and find ourselves unattractive, unworthy, or whatever. And one needs to stop that and allow the energy that we are to flow through us in self-acceptance.
Right.
And when we accept ourselves, the energy field that we offer to others changes drastically. And they find that they just want to be in our company because we are so relaxing and accepting of them.
You almost say things right before I start so often our blogs and even our conversations are so similar. I was about to say a similar thing. When we are feeling that love for ourselves, we emanate it to others, and we actually attract people to us. people feel good around us because they feel the love that's coming through us. And we all want to be with people that we feel good about. And so
Well,
it's
that's how you and I got together,
it,
really,
it,
because you listened to my blog and you communicated, and then we started to Skype, and we just sort of accepted each other, and it flowed very beautifully. And
it
we got
did.
together and did the webinar. So, yeah.
Yes, exactly. So that was another miracle. So the last thing I would say are there are miracles all around us all the time. Be aware, notice, and not try to practice being grateful, but notice all the great things that come into your life, and you won't be able to help but be grateful. I find pennies, and those stand for pennies from heaven. I have just little things happen all day long that remind me that there's synchronicity, there's so many coincidences in your life, what some people describe as the universe conspiring in our best interests. So to be in that state of mind just means that we become present and connect with love, because as John and I always say, love is all there is.
Yeah, and we tend to focus on the things that are worrying us and anxious, like, oh, will I be able to find an apartment? Or is the car going to break down? Or I've got to pay this bill or that bill. And
Right.
we need to stand back from that and say, despite all that, I've got a bed to sleep in, I've got food to eat, and it's a lovely day. And just
Yes,
sit peacefully for a moment and enjoy the moment. And it does bring you a much stronger sense of peace, contentment.
absolutely.
And then you can deal with the other issues.
Of course. It makes such sense. And in the moments when you're feeling that anxiety, just remember to open to presence, let love
Exactly.
enter now. So, John, will you tell people about your blogs?
Excuse me, I keep coughing. It's the excitement of being in a conversation with Danna. Yeah, I started my channeling back in 1995, and I didn't know what to do with it. I tried to write a book, and it didn't turn out. And finally, in about 2009, a friend of my wife's said to me, John, you really need to get that out there. And that was like the impetus. Oh, I suppose so. And I was thinking, well, how can I do it? You know, I mean, the book didn't work, and magazines wouldn't want the sort of stuff I've got to say. And then I became aware there was such a thing as blogging. You know, I'm way behind the bell curve on modern technology. And I thought, oh, yeah. So I went out and bought Blogging for Dummies, learned how to blog, and thought, yeah, I'll do that. And so that's how I started. And I've been doing it ever since. I haven't changed anything. Same old screen when you plug into my blog site. And if you want to listen or read some of it, just Google John Smallman, and it'll bring you both my blogs very easily.
Yes. And just in case somebody wanted to go directly there, it's johnsmallman.wordpress.com.
Correct, yeah. Or johnsmallman2.wordpress.com.
Great. Well, I encourage everybody to do that because I love to listen to his English accent and his beautiful words as well as read it. And then I also invite you to come to I have two also. I have my professional website, dannabeal.com, and Danna has two N's, DANNABEAL.com. And I also have my spiritual website, and it's called the12wiseones.com, and it's spelled out. So it's THETWELVE wise ones, WISEONES.com. So
And there's some
we will,
lovely messages up there from the wise ones. You get some lovely stuff at 3 and 4 in the morning that you put
yes,
up there.
yeah,
They're really worth visiting and reading. Yeah.
yes, some of my messages truly come in the middle of the night, and I sleep with paper and pen. So I advise everybody to do that, because when we're asleep, we aren't so consciously being critical or out of the present. And I can get sometimes receive, I write it by hand and then type it in the morning, 10 or 12 pages of beautiful messages that I couldn't just sit down and write on my own. And I get it in the day too, but some of the ones that I receive in the night are quite amazing. So
They are indeed, yes.
yeah. So we are very happy you came and joined us today, anybody that's listening, and we hope that you feel a little lighter, a little brighter, and maybe a little bit more inspired to sit down and try to allow that flow to come through you and hear your own internal guidance and write it down. And I would love to hear from any of you if you want to share some of the information you received. We've gotten lots and lots of people that have said they just, were amazed and dazzled by the words and thoughts and inspirations they received. And so if anybody has something they'd like to share, just email me at dannabeal.com, and I can share it with John as well. So thank you, John, for joining me, and we plan to do some more of these. And so
well, thank you, Danna, for a lovely conversation. I've enjoyed it enormously, and it's nice to see you again after all these months.
yes, it's just been great. So,
Okay.
so thank you, everybody, and hope you enjoy. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.